Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another HFY narration. Today, we will be reading Humans Are Just Average, and That's What Makes Them Dangerous. Made by Firefighter Raven. You guys better strap in, because this will be longer than usual. Thanks for the writer's permission. Hope you'll enjoy. Let's begin. Etan Azel listened to the slaver deliver his sales pitch before halting him by raising his hand. "Let me see what you have," he demanded. As always, slavers were extremely obsequious when it came to dealing with Gokhan nobles. The slaver bowed and replied, "As you wish, Lord." Etan smirked at that response. He still wasn't used to being referred to as Lord. He only recently reached his age of maturity and finally inherited all his late sire's land and property. His maternal grandsire had managed his lands after his sire died and raised Etan with all the skills a noble needed. Humility wasn't one of those skills. He was often haughty to people he saw as below him. He saw non-Gokhan to be especially inferior and expected deference from them. After all, he was a Gokhan noble, and only the royal family were above them. Rank was meat and drink to the Gokhans. Those that had it flaunted it, and those that didn't try to obtain it. Etan's sire had attained his rank for his abilities and exceptional service to the king. Etan assumed those same abilities had been passed down to him. After all, the gods put the nobles over everyone else. One of his first needs was to display his power by obtaining new slaves to work his lands. What good is a title if you can't flaunt it over others? So there he sat, unwilling to admit he was in over his head, accompanied by his Morzor steward and Ratriak bodyguards. He conferred with his steward about which slaves would be the most useful from the selection of the usual enslaved species. While his steward negotiated prices, Etan casually looked around, and that is when he saw another slave inside the ship. Its arms and legs were shackled, even if it was already locked in a cage. Etan couldn't see its face because there was a hood over his head. He looked at the slaver. "Why isn't that one being presented, Lord?" The slaver replied. "The hooded one in the ship," Etan said. "Ah, you mean the human," the slaver answered. "He's bound for the mines in the Dakari sector. Humans are too dangerous to serve in any other capacity, especially this one." "I've never heard of a human before," Etan continued. "Bring him forth." "But Lord, the human is not worthy of—" "Now," Etan interrupted. The slaver bowed his head. "It shall be done." He waved to a pair of his henchmen, who pulled the stun batons from their belts. One of them approached the cage, unlocked it, and opened the door. One of them stayed just out of reach, its baton at the ready. It was slow going with the leg shackles, but they eventually had him standing before Etan. "Remove his hood." As the slaver complied, it revealed that the slave was also wearing a gag. "Why is he gagged? Does he have large fangs or something?" Etan inquired. "No, my lord, he is just really annoying and disrespectful," answered the slaver. Turning to his steward, "Have you heard of these humans before?" "No, my lord," the steward answered before turning to address the slaver. "Where are these humans from? What system?" the steward demanded. "KX-2489, systems in the Dratic sector. The humans call it Sol," the slaver began. "It's not surprising that you've never seen one. They are low-tech and haven't even left their system yet. The Zerankin have been known to capture individual humans for study or experimentation. Unsuitable specimens are sold into slavery or to the fighting pits." Etan sat up at the mention of the fighting pits. He enjoyed them immensely, and imagined himself to be a true connoisseur of the martial arts used in the pits. If he had a fighter of his own, that could bring him fame. "And how do they fare in the matches?" Etan asked. "If they are trained in some fashion, they are above average," the slaver continued. "Their planet has a higher than average gravity, so they are stronger than most." The slaver pointed at Etan's Ratriak bodyguards. "Humans aren't a match for them in strength, but they are stronger than all but the two Wasot slaves at the end. Humans are intelligent, especially for how primitive his people are, but they can't come close to your Morzo steward. Their endurance is somewhere in the middle of most pit fighters. All in all, humans are just average pit fighters, and that makes them especially dangerous," the slaver finished. Etan looked confused and asked, "What do you mean by that?" The slaver replied, "They don't rely solely on one ability, but on all of theirs at the same time. And this was one of their warriors when they caught him, so he's even more dangerous." Etan thought for a second before speaking. "I'll take him." Both his steward and the slaver looked at him with astonishment on their faces. "But my lord," the steward uttered. "It's not a good," the slaver tried to reply. Etan gave both of them his most withering look. "I said I'll take him." With no choice, they both acquiesced to his demand. "And I'll take all the rest as well," Atan replied. At this pronouncement, the slaver's attitude improved. Once the formalities of payment and transfer of ownership were done, the Ratriak led the slaves away. The hood was replaced on the human, but his leg shackles were removed. Otherwise it would take all day to get him to the slave pens. The steward approached Atan. "My lord, is it wise to have someone that dangerous on the estate?" Atan chuckled. "He won't be on the estate for long. I'm going to send him to fight in the pits." The steward smiled at that. "Excellent idea, lord. I'll start making the arrangements to book him passage on the next ship out." Eton was smug as he followed up. "You heard the slaver. He's not as strong as my guards, nor can he outsmart you. And I am more than clever enough to handle him." It was the middle of the night when a sound woke Eton up. He was annoyed to have his slumber disturbed. He wasn't sure what it was, but he thought it was a loud thump. He got up and threw on his robe, muttering to himself about punishments the culprit would receive. Once he got to the door, he opened the slot that let him see into the hallway without opening the door. He could barely make out the pair of Ratriak guards that flanked the door. "What was that noise?" he demanded, but neither guard answered. "Answer me!" But still no reply. Eton closed the slot and opened the door. "I said answer me, or I'll send you to the pits." He exited the room and turned to look at the guards. "Well, answer me!" It was then Eton realized they'd never answer him. Both guards were gruesomely dead, with their throats slit and blood all over the walls and the floor. It still dribbled down from the wound and down their chests to pool at their feet. In his shocked state, it took him a moment to wonder how they were still standing. That is when he noticed the thin but strong wire wrapped around their necks. The wire cut deeply into their flesh, and Eton followed it up to the access hatch in the ceiling. His head whipped around as he looked for danger. Then he went back into his room, slammed the door, and locked it. He looked around for his sidearm, but it was too dark. He flipped the switch for the light, and that is when he saw the steward's head. It was impaled on one of the bedposts. He started to walk back towards the door when he came up against something solid. He felt another being's breath on his neck, and a hand pulling his head back. "You should have listened to the slaver," was spoken into his ear before he felt a sharp line of fire across his neck and he struggled to breathe. And then he slipped into darkness. Thank you for listening. I'm glad to still have you here. This one was certainly enjoyable, and one of the longer stories so far. I hope I managed to do a well enough job for you guys. If you have stuck around, go and show your appreciation to the writer on HFY. I hope you're having a good day, and I'll see you in the next one.